I never imagined that something as ordinary as a hotel stay could turn into the most terrifying experience of my life. What I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's what happened to me in a place I will never forget. This is my experience in room 404. That day had been long, and I was eager to rest. I checked into a hotel that looked unassuming from the outside, a place I had chosen for its convenience more than anything else. The staff at the reception desk was friendly, and after a brief conversation, I was handed the key to room 404. Nothing seemed unusual at the time, but in retrospect, I should have known something was wrong. The clerk's smile was a bit strained, and there was a hesitation in her voice when she handed me the key, but I was too tired to notice. The elevator right to the fourth floor was uneventful. The hallway was quiet, the carpet soft under my feet, muffling my footsteps as I walked toward my room. The door to room 404 looked like any other, a simple number plaque above the doorknob. I inserted the key and turned it, pushing the door open. The moment I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air was different, colder, heavier. I brushed it off as fatigue and made my way to the bed, placing my suitcase on the luggage rack. The room was decorated in a minimalist style, with muted colors and simple furniture. Yet, something fell off. The shadows seemed darker, the corners of the room almost too deep to see into, as if the light from the lamps couldn't quite reach them. I decided to take a shower, hoping the hot water would wash away my unease. But even in the bathroom, the feeling of being watched persisted. The mirror above the sink reflected my tired face, but something about the reflection seemed delayed, as if it was slightly out of sync with my movements. I shook my head, blaming my imagination, and stepped into the shower. The water was warm, and for a moment, I began to relax. But then, the lights flickered. It was brief, just a second or two, but it was enough to jolt me back into that uneasy state. I quickly finished my shower and got dressed, the sense of foreboding growing stronger with every passing minute. As I stepped out of the bathroom, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. The room was different. The furniture had shifted slightly. The bed was no longer perfectly centered against the wall, and the paintings on the walls seemed to have changed positions. I entered anyone enter, and I was sure I had locked the door. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. Then, I saw a small door in the corner of the room that I hadn't noticed before. It was partially hidden behind a curtain, as if someone had tried to conceal it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The door was cold to the touch, unnaturally so, and when I turned the knob, it opened with an eerie creak. Beyond the door was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Every instinct screamed at me to close the door and forget about it, but I couldn't. It was as if something was pulling me in, urging me to descend those steps. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, the weak beam of light cutting through the darkness, just enough to see a few feet ahead. The stairs were old, each step growing under my weight. The walls were damp and covered in a strange, black mold that seemed to pulse slightly, as if alive. The air grew colder as I descended, and the oppressive feeling I had experienced earlier intensified. I could hear a faint whispering, too soft to make out any words, but it sent shivers down my spine. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a long, narrow hallway. The walls were lined with old, wooden doors, each one slightly ajar. A faint light flickered at the far end of the corridor, and I felt an overwhelming urge to reach it, as if it held the key to understanding what was happening. As I walked down the hallway, the whispering grew louder, more distinct. The voices were a chorus of agony, pleading, and despair, echoing off the walls. I tried to block them out, focusing on the light ahead, but they were relentless, clawing at the edges of my sanity. I reached the end of the hallway and found a large, ornate door. Unlike the others, this one was closed, and the light seemed to be coming from underneath it. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Whatever lay beyond this door was the source of everything wrong with room 404. I knew that opening it could change everything, but I also knew I couldn't turn back now. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room beyond was vast, far too large to fit within the confines of the hotel. It was a grand ballroom, but the grandeur was long gone. The chandeliers hung crooked, their crystals missing or broken. The floor was covered in dust, and the walls were lined with mirrors, all of them cracked and distorted. In the center of the room stood a figure, its back to me. It was tall, dressed in what looked like a decaying, old-fashioned suit. The figure was motionless, but the air around it seemed to pulse with a dark energy. I took a step closer, and as I did, the figure began to turn slowly toward me. My breath caught in my throat as I saw his face, or rather, the lack of one. The figure had no features, just a smooth, pale surface where a face should have been. It was as if the very essence of humanity had been stripped away, leaving behind only a hollow shell. Despite the lack of eyes, I could feel it staring at me, its attention fixed on me entirely. I wanted to run, to get as far away from that thing as possible, but my legs wouldn't move. The figure began to advance, slow and deliberate, its steps echoing in the silent room. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was as if the air had been sucked from my lungs. Just as the figure reached me, everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor of my hotel room, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. I scrambled to my feet, looking around in a panic, but everything was as it had been when I first entered the room. The bed was centered, the paintings were in place, and there was no sign of the small door or the staircase. I could have convinced myself that it was all just a nightmare, a figment of my imagination, but something was different. On the nightstand beside the bed was a keeled, rusted, and covered in that same strange, black mold. It wasn't the key to room 404, but it felt familiar, as if I had seen it before. My heart pounded as I picked up the key. The moment I touched it, a wave of cold washed over me, and I heard the whispering again, faint and distant, but unmistakable. I knew then that what I had experienced was real, that room 404 was not just a hotel room, but a gateway to something far darker, something that would never let me go. I checked out of the hotel as quickly as I could, not daring to look back, but even now, I can feel its pull, the cold touch of the key lingering in my pocket, and the whispers that haunt my every waking moment. Room 404 is more than a number, it's a door to a place that should never be opened, a place where nightmares become reality. And now, it's part of me. This story, this experience, is something that will stay with me forever. If you ever find yourself in a hotel, handed the key to room 404, remember my story. Walk away, don't open the door. You might not be as lucky as I was to get out.